Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Garnpine. Today on Gracefully Graying, I am very pleased to welcome as our guest Rabbi Jennifer Kaluzny from Temple, Israel, as she leads us in a discussion of the inevitability of aging. Rabbi Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we finally got to have this discussion. It's a really important one.
I know you're very, very busy, but I appreciate your coming on. First of all, Rabbi Kaluzny, tell us about your background.
So I am a native Detroiter. I am one of the lucky and rare rabbis that came home to their home congregation. I was born and raised at Temple, Israel, and now I've been a rabbi there for 20 years. I'm in my 21st year. And it's hard to believe, actually. And I've spent a lot of my career helping people transition into hospice. Actually, I've been a hospice chaplain for over 20 years. And I'm really passionate about taking care of older adults and people who kind of need that extra community support.
Rabbi Jen, what made you decide to become a rabbi?
It was kind of lots of factors. I grew up in a warm and loving Jewish home where Jewish tradition was very organic. And I grew up going to Temple Israel every Shabbat. And granted, at that time, our services were so late, my parents used to usually carry me out. I'd fall asleep. But my rabbis always looked like they were enjoying what they were doing and being fulfilled. And I loved Hebrew. I loved learning Torah. And I wanted to be in a helping profession. So I considered nursing, but I also wanted to do it in Jewish way. And becoming a rabbi allows me to be in a medical environment through hospice and through hospital visitation and be part of a care team, especially when I deal with hospice patients. And it also lets me teach, and it lets me write, and it lets me marry my friends and name their babies and be with families when they need us the most. And so being a rabbi was the best way I felt to actualize any potential that I had in any or all of these different areas.
I know you've done a wonderful job so far, and it sounds like you really love what you're doing.
I do.
Rabbi Jen, you are part of the sandwich generation with aging parents and, well, maybe not so young, but young children. What are some tips that you can give to those of us who are in your circumstances?
I am absolutely there. We've actually been caring pretty seriously, acutely for my mother-in-law in the past couple of months. And kind of my husband got to see in a front row seat what I do every day for our families. I would say there is never, ever a time when it's not a good time to prepare yourself. And even though I work mostly with an older generation that needs the care now and maybe needs the support now, what I tell my friends, we're in our 40s, is you have to have a plan for your medical power of attorney now. I tell my friends to get long-term care insurance now before they might not be eligible. I tell my friends to put money away for their own care so we don't become burdens to our children. And also, I really try to encourage my friends to have really difficult but important conversations with their parents, to ask them, what are your wishes? How do you want me to care for you? Do you have a will? Do you have a medical durable power of attorney? And a lot of times they'll look at me and they may not know what I'm saying at all. And we'll slow down and we'll talk about why I'm telling them to make these decisions now and why I'm pushing them to do it for themselves and for their parents now. Because I don't want anyone having to deal with these things when they're in crisis. It is so much harder when we're in crisis.
You're raising some excellent points. I know, especially with long-term care insurance, it's harder and harder to get it. And if you don't get it while you're young, especially if you start having a pre-existing condition, you can forget about it.
Exactly.
The importance of having a durable power of attorney, medical directives, will, estate plan, trusts. I mean, they're critical. I mean, we never know what tomorrow will bring in, especially in your career. You see this more and more often with
Mhm.
people of all ages, quite frankly.
Well, I think that that's what people are realizing is sadly we've had some what I would call out of order deaths, premature deaths for sure, of people that are in their 40s and early 50s who obviously never thought that that would happen. And it left families without answers to a lot of these questions and really feeling unprepared. And so, even though these are not fun conversations, and they're making us face something very sad and something we don't want to face on a day to day basis, it's giving our loved ones the biggest gift we can give them, and that's the gift of security.
I think it's giving them security and peace of mind, for lack of a
Mhm.
better word.
Mhm.
Rabbi Jen, you are part of an upcoming panel at Temple Israel later this month. Tell us about the topic for your upcoming panel discussion. Aging isn't inevitable. I guess there's no way to beat it, but it is what it
There's
is.
no way to beat it. And what we're also learning, again, from these really, really tragic premature deaths is we're lucky if we age. And even with everything that comes with it, maybe the aches and pains, we're lucky if we age. And what we're seeing also in Detroit is that we're the second oldest Jewish community to Florida, actually. And we are about to be overcome by what scholars are calling the silver tsunami, which means the boomers are retiring and the boomers are aging and the boomers need care. And so, myself and the head of the Robert Sosnick Family Life Center at Temple Israel, Carrie Provisor, our in house social worker, we help families every single day deal with crisis. And what we're trying to do again is to stave off crisis. And so, we've put together a panel that I will be on, that Carrie will also be on. We have Elisa Tobias, who not only has her own company to kind of help people move through these transitions, but she also has been working at Waltonwood, which is one of the senior facilities, for years and years and years. And it's easy to call her an expert on what to do, what steps to take in order to care for your family and for your loved one who's aging. And we also have David Trebacks on our panel of Serlin and Trebacks. And he does a lot of what we would call perhaps estate planning, but also he can walk us through what does it mean to protect your home if you are trying to care for someone and they might need Medicaid, but you still own a home. What happens to that home? He can walk us through the legalities of how do we protect a surviving spouse while caring for the ailing spouse. There are a lot of legal questions that also even get into accounting that we need to ask ourselves, because when we're caring for someone, people also don't realize quite how expensive it is and how little is actually covered by things like insurance and Medicare. So, David is going to help us understand how we can legally prepare ourselves and our estates so that even if we're caring for someone who's ailing, we're also protecting the person who is surviving.
You know, you've got a great panel. I know them all. Elisa Tobias has been a guest on this show on several occasions, so I would highly recommend it. When's the date? Is it September 24th?
September 26th at Temple Israel. And Elisa has invited her whole network, which is quite vast. So if people come, they'll also have the opportunity to kind of mill around and meet people and ask questions. And they might find someone there that can really be helpful to them.
Well, this fits right in with this project I've been working on for years, so I will make it a point to attend. So
Great.
tell us about your role on this, Rabbi Jen.
My role on the panel.
Yes.
So I work with Carrie and Elisa a lot on planning and on crisis intervention. But also, obviously, as a rabbi, I also come in and help people walk through kind of the emotion of what we face as we age, and especially towards the end of life. I've had pretty incredible conversations with not only the person who's ailing, but their families about the soul and what we think happens after we pass. And what does grief really feel like? What does it mean? How do we travel through it? And so I also walk families through, what does Jewish law say about X? A lot of times I'll be with families and they have a doctor say to them, well, we can put them on a ventilator, but, and then they go into how perhaps the ventilator is really keeping someone alive who is really on the verge of passing. What does Judaism say about feeding tubes? What does Judaism say about hospice? And so a lot of times when someone is sick and passing away, the families will say to me, I want to make sure I do this right. And for them, that means not only taking care of the person they love, but doing it according to what Judaism would say is right to do. And so as a rabbi, I can help walk them through those questions.
One thing I've noticed, a little off topic, well, maybe not off topic, is the fact that in Judaism, when I was young, my mother passed away at a very early age, and we had Shiva for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a while, the trend was, it seemed to be that Shiva was 3 days. And now more and more, I've noticed that people are sitting Shiva for 1 day. And often it's done like at Temple Israel or at the funeral homes. So there's definitely been a trend. Do you see that a lot as well?
Absolutely. Rabbi Aaron Starr actually wrote an article in the Jewish News about kind of reclaiming Shiva a couple of years ago, and it was excellent. And I really think that having these short periods of Shiva is a product of the world that we live in, that we're supposed to move on from things very quickly, that everything that we do is fast, how we get our food, how we stream, whatever we want, whenever we want. And we're not used to slowing down. We're not used to stopping, and we're not used to doing what Shiva is supposed to do, which means doing nothing, but concentrating on the person that you loved who died and allowing yourself to be comforted in your own home. And I think that just in this world, that's just absolutely antithetical to the way we live our lives every day. As for having Shiva at Temple Israel, we actually opened that up during COVID because we had so many tents. We knew people were still having Shiva in their homes, and it really, really concerned us because we were seeing the effects of COVID and sadly doing way too many funerals from people who were passing from COVID. And so people loved being outside. They felt safer. We felt better, and we felt like everyone was being safer. And that has continued. We have some people who no one lives in town anymore. And instead of doing a Shiva at a hotel, they feel so comforted coming to Temple Israel to have their Shiva there. We also have people who say, my house isn't big enough and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. And they enjoy being at Temple because they feel like, again, there's a little more space, and they're not like, I've been to Shivas where it is so warm in the house that there's actually condensation coming down the screen door. So sometimes people choose just to have a larger space. And we feel really proud that we're able to offer this to members for no cost.
Rabbi John, I have a friend who passed away at the beginning of COVID, and he always used to believe that life is like a minefield. He was kind of a pessimist, and something was going to get you. And the question I have for you is, how do we deal with the bumps in the road as we age? And there are always bumps.
Oh, yes, there are always bumps. My sister and I talk about this all the time. The past 20 years has been kind of interesting in our own family. We've had quite a bit of illness and many challenges. And we were talking the other day about the little things in life that aggravate us. And it might sound so cliche, but after everything we've been through, we don't let a whole lot bother us. If we're together for, a Sunday night Chinese dinner, we've won the lottery. And that's because at the end of the day, my sister literally just said this to me yesterday, and I'm not kidding. She said, "We're all here. We're all doing okay. We're the best. Everything's fine." And I have met people who have asked, am I being punished? Is this some kind of punishment? Did I do something wrong? And what I tell them is, I personally don't believe a couple things. I don't believe in God's plan, because I don't think God plans for people to suffer. That's not the God that I believe in. I also tell people that I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I think that we can absolutely learn from suffering. I'm a big believer in Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, when he talks about finding meaning in suffering. Because if we don't, it's just suffering for suffering's sake. But I think that some things just happen to us, and it's up to us to kind of find that meaning. And I always tell them that they can be mad at God, they can scream at God, and that God can take it. And I think it's important to not lose faith, because if you lose faith, then you just kind of, what do you have? What do you have? What is holding you in that moment of suffering? What is keeping you from falling further? Faith, and whatever you perceive to be as God, as the energy around us, as a higher power, whatever you want to call it, is the safety net. And it might feel like that safety net is really far away, right? We're just in free fall. But I believe if we let that go, then the safety net goes too. And so I'm willing to sit in it with people. I tell them they can yell at me too. There's a lot that we experience in life. Life is going to throw a lot at us. And that's why we should appreciate where we are and what we have and who's around us, and make the best of all the good things that come to us, and do the best we can not to get too tripped up by the little things that life is going to inevitably throw at us.
That was beautifully stated. I mean, you've really captured my philosophy. I really believe that things happen to us, not necessarily for a reason, but very randomly. And, you just never know. And it's a matter of family, friends, making the most of little things. And I guess enjoying the day, seize the day, for lack of a better word. And, it's like, enjoy today, but also plan for the future. So I
Exactly.
captured it beautifully.
Thank you.
What advice, Rabbi Jen, would you give to an aging parent?
My advice would be, if you have children, give your children the best gift you can give them, which is planning for yourself or asking for help to plan, and have the conversation. Don't make it weird. Don't make it difficult. Just do it. You only have to have it once, maybe a couple follow-ups, but otherwise it's truly a gift to have planned for yourself. I would also say to people, and I say it to people all the time, do what makes you happy. If you're not feeling well, if you're ill, if you have a terminal illness and you've been told to enjoy what you enjoy, please indulge. I've been with people who are 100 years old and not diabetics. That's a different story, but who have decided they're going to eat chocolate or ice cream for 3 meals a day. And I'm like, if you want to eat it for 5 meals a day, I will bring it to you. It's never a bad time to enjoy what you enjoy, to live to the fullest, to start a new project, even if you are in your 90s and you don't know if you'll see it, come to fruition. Again, it's the whole idea of today is today, and let's make of today the best that we can. And God willing, we'll have it tomorrow. But if not, we made the most of today.
Well stated. My next question is, what advice would you give to someone who is a caregiver? And I know caregiving, it's hard on the person who's receiving the care, but it's also going to be very emotionally and physically draining being a caregiver.
Absolutely. And I would say what I've been saying to my own father-in-law for the past 10 years is that it is imperative that they take care of themselves. I always ask caregivers if they're eating, sleeping, and bathing. I ask them if they're taking their own medications because I always say to them, you don't want to find yourself in the bed, either in the hospital or in a facility or even at home, next to the loved one that they're caring for. Because if the caregiver isn't of sound mind and body, they're going to be no good to the person that they're caring for. Also, I've had a lot of caregivers kind of come to realities that they're grieving already before a person is gone. And I think it's really, really important to acknowledge the grief that caregivers are feeling while the person is still alive. It's a very emotional and physical, even experience to care for someone that you love. I've also told people it's okay if you reach a point where you can no longer care for someone. Caring for a full grown adult is not the same as caring for a child or for an infant, even though maybe some of their needs are the same, and that it's okay if they have reached their own physical or emotional limit in caregiving. Because even though having someone in facility may not be their first choice, it does free them up to some extent to focus on the emotional and on the relationship and not have to care as much for the physical needs of the person. So it's a lot of conversations that will evolve as their loved one progresses in their illness or in their process. And I try to always make sure that I know how the caregiver is doing just as much as I know how the person they're caring for is doing.
On a related topic, Rabbi Jen, what advice would you give to family members who are dealing with aging parents' health or cognitive issues? And I found often that there's a lot of denial, especially at the beginning if someone is becoming cognitively impaired and also with physical issues. So what is the advice that you give in this area?
I'm big on telling people to find an objective third party in their life that their parent trusts to perhaps have the conversation with them. Someone who knows the person well enough to perhaps also perceive a cognitive decline. Because sometimes the last person a parent is going to listen to is their own child. They might feel offended by the comment, or a lot of times what I've seen is that the person actually knows they're experiencing a cognitive decline, and they're so either panicked by it or embarrassed or both that they just completely shut down the conversation altogether. So what I'll say to them is there a rabbi in your life that the three of you, the four of you can go talk to together? Or is there a friend, a lifelong friend that you can all sit together and the lifelong friend can say, I love you and I'm worried about you. And let's start to do the things we need to do now to either slow progression or to set you up for as much success as possible. Because sometimes someone needs to hear it from another person. And so I think that everything needs to be approached with love and sensitivity and the understanding that they might have to do this multiple times before they actually get the outcome that they need. But there's a lot of planning. There's even planning of moving people out of their homes if they have steps, if they can't care for themselves, if they might leave a toaster on. At a certain point, when it becomes a safety issue, that's also when an objective third party might have to come in and say, we're all worried about you, your kids, your friends. This is a safety issue, and we need to make some difficult decisions.
You've raised some very important points. I'd like to go into one other area briefly, and that is you are very active with Jewish hospice. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with that.
So I started with Jewish Hospice as a student in, 2001, 2002. I went to Rabbi Bunny Friedman. The organization was 1 year old at the time. And I was getting another unit of what's called clinical pastoral education. It's 400 hours of pastoral care work. And I said, will you be my mentor? And he said, sure, just don't slow me down. And I said, okay. And I kind of never left. And what's incredible about Jewish Hospice, and people from all over the country want to know what we're doing, is that it's not a medical hospice. You still need a medical hospice. We are a network of advocacy, of rabbis, of very deep relationships to hospices and palliative care programs, also enrichments. So if someone calls us and says, my mom needs hospice, and we can help get that ball rolling because we have relationships with medical hospices, and we can call and say, Rabbi Jen just called. She has a congregant who's in crisis. Can we get someone out there to do an evaluation? And we can do that. We also can send a hairstylist to someone's home for a haircut. We don't often think about things like that when someone is homebound. We can get someone pet therapy. We have Cantor Daniel Gross from Adat Shalom goes and sings to people. He takes a keyboard and he sings to people. We have another man who takes a guitar and sings songs from the 50s and 60s, and Alzheimer's patients who don't speak anymore will start singing along with him. And it is remarkable to see. So basically, when you are part of Jewish Hospice and Chaplaincy Network, when you have someone who's on hospice or palliative care, it's basically like giant arms of support and advocacy and networking and services wrapped around not only the hospice patient or the palliative care patient, but the family also.
Wonderful. We're down to less than a minute. What are some final thoughts that you would like to share with our viewers before we sign off?
Well, first of all, thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for bringing all the awareness that you're bringing to what it looks like when you gracefully gray. And I think that my message is I want everyone to gracefully gray. I want the services and the networks and the people in the community to help as many people as possible not reach a crisis point, and to know that there is help out there. There is so much help out there, and we are ready to help. We are wanting to help, and we want people to have the dignity and the respect that they deserve in their later years in life.
Rabbi Jen, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Graying. I want to thank our viewers and sponsors for making Gracefully Graying possible. So thank you, Rabbi Jennifer Kaluzny, for this conversation.